Welcome to the Explorer Poet Podcast, an exploration of the blurry line separating our physical world from our abstract realities. Conversations and stories, myths and reality, science and the gods we worship, the esoteric and the everyday. Come explore with me. Okay, hi Drew. Welcome to the Explorer Poet Podcast.
Hey, excited to be on here with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a lot of fun for me because you and I have actually known each other for a long time. I've had other friends of mine on the podcast, but you're like the only friend on the podcast who knew me when I still had hair. So it's like, it's like we've known each other that long, which is kind of fun. But we were having you and I were having
Josh.
Yeah, pre-bald Josh when I still had a hairline. You and I were having a conversation over the phone the other day and just kind of catching up, talking about life, what you're doing with work and business and employment and all that. And then we also started talking about, I don't know, kind of your journey from a self perspective, from like a self growth and, figuring yourself out. And for anybody who listens to my conversations, they know that that's kind of what I actually really do kind of hone in on that. And I like talking to people from a bunch of different perspectives to figure out like what that process looks like for them, or kind of what the bigger picture is as far as the things that we engage with in life, and then how that moves us towards something actually worth being engaged with. So yeah, this is cool to me because in our conversation the other day, I was like, whoa, like Drew has really figured a lot of stuff out. He's come a long way. And I was like, oh, it'd be good to capture some of this wisdom that he's been able to put together. But first of all, I think it would be good to talk about what you're doing as far as business and entrepreneurship and kind of what your background is. So maybe just give us a quick story of where you started in like the sales world, and then where you're at now, and kind of why you got there, or how and why you got there.
So I've now spent over a decade in sales, and doing that from being a sales rep myself to running teams, hiring teams, training people, building out sales teams and sales forces and organizations. Have had a lot of success doing that. Really, really have grown to love sales. And I say grow, like I don't think I loved it at first. It was a means to an end early on for me. And yeah, so up until recently, I was working for organizations running sales teams, and a couple of years ago, just got this feeling that I just felt called to make a bigger impact in what I was doing in my life, and a lot of unhappiness. And we'll get into that a little bit today. And about a year ago, I joined a growth agency with the intention I was going to be doing sales training with this growth agency that helped teams grow and scale. They brought me on a little bit prematurely. They kind of pivoted about the same time I joined them, and great company, loved them, loved my time with them. And it just didn't end up being a great fit. So probably about 6 months ago, I went independent, and now I'm coaching individuals, mostly around business one-on-one, and then doing sales consulting with sales teams, where I'll come in and work with a sales team, work with a sales org, and help them, perfect their scripts, get better at what they're doing, change their mindset. And it's been a fun adventure. It's been rebuilding myself and my business this last year, kind of started over again. And I've really enjoyed it. It's been really fun. So
yeah, that's cool. So this actually might be the first time that I've had somebody who's like an entrepreneur or a business person on the podcast. But I think it's just because it's taken me a while to get around to that, because in my own life, that's something that's fascinating for me as well. As you know, like I've done entrepreneurship. I started a couple of tech companies. One of them had some success. And it really is interesting because just chasing something, pursuing a goal, oftentimes we're in this mindset of really just wanting to achieve the goal. But the way that I've come to see it now is that if you think about a human being as like a psyche or some kind of there's like a deeper part of us that's kind of pulling the strings and wants something of us. You could consider it like the true self, or maybe, like the spirit inside of you, or like the divine aspect of us as humans. It's almost as if whatever world we live in, we have to exist in the context of that world. And for some people, that existing is, just going and getting a job or pursuing something. But for some of us, me included, it seems like you as well, there's like this draw to go do something for yourself, to go be an entrepreneur, to start something, to create something. And I think about it now almost as if those goals or objectives that kind of come to us because of our situation, they're almost like that deeper part of us is like we're like a donkey, and the deeper part of us is like holding a carrot out in front of us, like trying to get us to go somewhere,
Right.
The way I almost think about it, the term I use is proximal goals. Like they're proximal because the proximity is like you can see them in front of you. And so your conscious self, whatever that is, thinks that that thing is the goal. But deep down, I feel like the true self, or the psyche, part of the psyche, is trying to get the whole somewhere bigger, somewhere where you can actually do some growth. You can figure some things out. You can become a more, even if it's just maturity, it's like trying to get you to become a more mature, balanced person. And that's kind of what I came to see from my own experience, because on some level I was dreaming of money and nice things and vacations, but at some point I always knew that really what my psyche wanted was for me to have some time to figure myself out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, as you kind of said all that, what it brought to mind is, well, have you heard of Clifton Strengths, Josh?
No, I'm not familiar.
So Gallup, Clifton
yeah,
Strengths.
Gallup. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they're an organization that has an assessment to really help people recognize their strengths and help organizations know where the strengths and weaknesses are on your teams. And maybe weaknesses isn't the right word, but
opportunity, really, I think they say it in the business world.
Right. And my top two in that assessment, and I can't remember which one's first and which one's second, but it's learner and futuristic, or futurist. And the futurist has been something that's really driven me, and it's also gotten me into a lot of trouble. Because I just having that entrepreneur mindset, that the donkey with the carrot out in front of you, I've always been driven by goals and chasing something and going towards something, and that's really motivated me. The problem has been often for a good majority of my adult life, probably up until the last couple of years, I found myself constantly saying, I'll be happy when X happens. I'll be happy when Y happens. I'll be happy when I hit this goal. I'll be happy when, I achieve financial freedom. I'll be, happy when I break a personal record. Right. And what that often left was just unhappiness when you get there. And so, which has led to me figuring out, okay, how do I be happy now? How do I find happiness in the moment? How do I find happiness in the journey? We've got a podcast called The Everyday Leader, and a group, and part of that group, we talk about, our group's called The Climb, and that the idea is like finding joy in the journey, finding joy in the climb. And yeah, I've realized if you can't be happy right now, you're not going to be happy when whatever thing you're dreaming about 6 months or 6 years from now comes. So it's been a big learning realization for me last couple of years.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I struggled with. I probably would be considered that same thing, a futurist. And I guess I take that to mean that you're always looking ahead. You're looking to the future. You're looking, what can come down the pipe rather than what's here right now.
Well, there's some really helpful things in that too. Like,
sure,
it can help drive you. It can help you see, okay, hey, if we want to improve and get better, and you're looking to the future, you're thinking about, hey, what do we do now to make the future better? And it, like I said, I feel as much as it's been a strength for me, it's also created, earlier in my life, I'd call them blind spots, things I wasn't aware of were self-sabotaging or creating unhappiness in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you are always looking to the future, at least my experience was, not only did I want to do something, but I wanted to accomplish something. Like I wanted there to be an end point where I could look back and say, I got there. And the problem with that is that every time there was a hiccup, every time there's a bump, every time something doesn't work out, every time there's a setback, it was almost like an emotional collapse because you're like, oh, I'm never going to get there.
Yeah.
This other place you can get to where instead of seeing it as a proximal goal, which is, I think you said it in a really good way, where you think, when I get this to this point, I'll be happy. When I get to this point, I will figure myself out. When I get to this point, but that point never actually comes where you are happy because you've done something. You have to figure out how to be happy throughout the journey. And so those proximal goals will keep you moving down a path. But the psyche has this bigger goal, which is figure yourself out along the journey. Because what really actually ends up happening is that you realize at some point, I'm going to be 90 and still have something I want to do. Because unless you're dying, like, you've got to keep finding something to do to keep yourself occupied in some way. And so you, in a big way, it's kind of like a Eastern philosophy where you have to be willing to let go of the ends and just appreciate the journey along the way.
Yeah, we talk a lot. And when I say we, I'm referring to the guys I do my podcast with, but we talk about the importance of being, oh, no, I can't, now I'm going to butcher it, but working hard towards something and not being committed to the results. And I've really grown fascinated with the way I speak or say things. And I found what I talk about really influences my thinking. I love the book Think and Grow Rich. And I think the next step, like the way to control your thoughts, is the way to control what you say. And so yeah, it's just been, so now what I'm trying to say or speak is like, hey, I want to be present now. I want to be happy now. And this is just the game I happen to be playing at the same time. And just kind of look at life or look at those goals as instead of like, hey, I'm driving to do this for happiness. I just really enjoy the work and I enjoy this. And I'm going to view that more of as a game than a goal that has to be achieved to bring some level of satisfaction in life.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And also for me, it was helpful to just realize that happiness is an emotion. And you can't always have the same emotion because you're going to be but you can always have like a curiosity in every moment. You can have this awareness that, there's an opportunity for growth in every moment. And so, shifting away from like constantly needing to be happy to maybe just pursuing fulfillment in a different way, or pursuing curiosity, just hoping to learn in every moment. But you said earlier that you were in a job and you were doing sales, you're doing fine. You're probably doing really well, but you found yourself unhappy. So like, go back to that moment. And I'm curious what the experience was in the process of kind of deciding to choose a different path, like maybe a path where you could achieve some happiness over a path that was financially was setting you up in a good way. What was that experience like? And then how did you go about choosing to, what I would say in the context of this podcast is like, how did you choose the hero's journey over the normal man's journey?
Yeah. I think, back to that experience we previously talked about. I'd been running sales teams and been having a lot of success making. I mean, when I moved into the last sales job I was in, I doubled my income 2 or 3 times in a row, and was doing really well. Had a moment a couple of years ago where, and I love real estate, so I do real estate investing as well. You know that, Josh. I found myself kind of dabbling in multiple things. That's probably another. That's a problem a lot of entrepreneurs have.
It's definitely a problem I have. Yeah,
a situation that a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves in. is they're always looking to start or be a part of multiple things. So I had this thought that like, hey, what would my life look like if I went all in? And it was great because of what it created in my life. And at the same time, it created a lot of unhappiness. So I kind of made this decision. I'm going to go all in on running my sales team and being the best version of myself when it comes to sales, and had my best year ever, the most consistent year I'd ever had. I broke records personally and in our company, and made the most money I ever had. And with that, especially with sales is really volume based. And the more I sold, that meant the more work I had to do also. And so I quickly found myself, even though I was selling and having a great amount of success, it's like I would start getting calls from our operations at 6 a.m, and I'd be dealing with customers at 8, 9 o'clock at night, and just felt like I was always working. And on top of that, it's like I couldn't even go on vacation without feeling like I had a to-do list, or that I had to check an email or had to respond to a client. And that just started to wear on me quite a bit. I had a very hard time setting boundaries in my life. Some boundaries would have really helped. One thing that helped is I hired an assistant, my own personal assistant, that really took a lot off my plate. And what was really funny though, is there came a month where I'd made more in a month than I'd made in some years previously. And I was just like burnt out, hated my life. It's like, this is not worth it. I really started valuing at that time, my time, in the sense that I felt like, hey, my time is now worth more to me than money is. And I think I would rather have all the time in the world and be broke than have all the money in the world and not have freedom of my time. And so I just recognized at that point, like I wasn't, although I really enjoyed what I was doing and I enjoyed the success, I wanted to, there were other things I found that lit me up more. For example, in leading sales teams, I often worked with a lot of young men that were new to sales, and I really loved seeing them do well and see them make money. I had a couple guys, I was their young men's leader at my church, and they came and worked for me and made 6 figures, skipped college. They've done really well. They're on great paths in their life. And like, that was way more fun than any amount of money that I made or anything that I did. And I just had this desire, like, I want to do more of that. The next couple of years, I made a good shift. My teams did really well. My teams led our company. I grew our team from the smallest team to the largest team in the company a couple of years in a row. And ultimately what made me step away is the role I wanted to grow into wasn't there at the company. So I kind of outgrew what they wanted me to do. And that ultimately led to me stepping away. That started with me doing some coaching. That agency I said I ended up working for, I actually hired them to coach with them first. And Matt was my coach, who's on our podcast. So we now run a podcast and a entrepreneur mastermind, business mastermind together.
What's the name of your podcast? Say that one more time.
Yeah, The Everyday Leader.
The Everyday Leader
yep. Podcast. So yeah, we like to talk about just how you can be a leader every day of your life, and it's not about titles. We just want to inspire people to live more authentically and to live like a leader. So yeah. Anyways, started coaching, and all along the last few years, I've been really big into reading books and studying, and just the more I've read, the more I've learned, the more I've coached, it has caused me to look more internally, which is where a lot of this growth and changes come and happened.
That's where growth and change always comes from, huh?
Right.
You gotta turn inward.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I don't know if you saw me when I got to my heaviest, Josh.
I honestly, I don't know if I did. It's hard for me to imagine you overweight.
I'm about 200 pounds right now. I got up to 265 at one point.
But you're a healthy 200 pounds. How tall are you? You're like 6'3". 3? Yeah, you're tall.
I'm tall.
Way taller than me.
I hit the weight pretty good, and I was definitely carrying quite a bit in my face and other areas. And like my health is an area first, that one of the big areas I recognized a shift in mindset. So like a lot of times when you think about, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and I want to improve my health, most people start with a to-do list of what they've got to do. It's like, okay, I've got to eat, track my calories and have this many workouts a week and take this many steps a day and almost make a to-do list. One of the big shifts I had in mindset was just this idea of like, who would I have to be healthy? So one of the affirmations started telling myself, and I tell myself to this day, is I'm healthy, fit, active, and strong. So like living out of that, living from a place of like, hey, well, how am I going to live today? Well, I'm going to make choices that are healthy. I'm going to make choices because I'm fit. I'm going to make choices because I'm strong and I'm active. And I had kind of yo-yoed on weight for a couple of years trying to lose it. And like, it's funny, like I'll go back and look at my Fitbit. When I started saying that to myself, like my steps doubled. And have stayed probably twice as high, and I've been twice as active ever since. And I think that just came from like uncovering like, no, I want to be someone who's healthy. And then when that happens, what's interesting is like when you change your identity or when you act out of a place of being instead of doing, usually the doing just follows naturally. And I found that to be really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's a really important principle. In fact, from my perspective, I think that identity is actually, our culture these days, they really like to focus in on identity, and a lot of people want to defend their identity, and they want the rest of the world to see them for like the identity that they see themselves. The irony of it is that identity is not even a real thing. It's like we're so
Right.
plastic in our minds that identity is constantly changing, and whatever inputs come in, if you can like integrate those inputs, they become part of your identity. And so somebody who, for example, is 18 and thinks of themselves in a certain way, by the time they're 30, they may be embarrassed by that identity. And by the time they're 40, they may have circled back to that identity. And by the time they're 50, they may have figured out like, oh, my identity is always just what I tell myself. And in reality, the outer world has zero input on your identity unless you allow it to. And so I think it's really interesting, like your ability to begin telling yourself that you are a thing. When you started saying your affirmations, I'm healthy, I'm active, fit, whatever they are, that's what immediately stuck in my mind is like, oh, you started to change the way that you looked at yourself.
Yeah.
And because you change the way you see yourself, you just become the person who does that thing. Like if that's who you are, then you do that thing. So for me, for example, I'm a writer. And so if I go too many days without writing, I start to feel very depressed because I'm a writer. Like I write. If I'm not writing, then I'm losing that, right? But also from a health perspective, it makes sense a lot to me as well, because a lot of people will like, when you talk to them about being fit, being healthy, they'll complain about restricting their diet, or they'll complain about how unfun or just how difficult activities are. Like some people will say, I hate running. I hate lifting weights. I hate going to the gym. And for me, or the other one is people will say, I need to, like you were saying, these lists, right? I need to, I have a friend, and he was like, he'd never been on like a sports team in high school. He was always like a climber and an outdoorsman. And so that's how he had his fun exercising. But he had never participated in a sport where he had to go running. He'd never, done something where he was pushed in that way. And then, 20, 30 years later, we're having this conversation, and he's like, I need to start running. And I'm like, well, do you enjoy running? He's like, no, I hate it. I'm like, then why would you think you need to do it? If you hate it, don't do it. Fitness is actually like, you identify with a thing, and then you do that because that's who you are. And so if you enjoy running, go run. But if you enjoy rock climbing, go rock climb. And if you enjoy, whatever the activity is, if you enjoy mountain biking, go be a mountain biker. But you don't have to do everything. You should be doing the thing you identify with from a perspective where it doesn't feel like work. It's like enjoyable because that's who you are. And for me personally, I love running. And so I run, and I like lifting weights when I can squeeze it into my schedule. It's not like I have to do this battle with my head. It's like, I want to do it. And that's actually the easiest way to become good at something.
Yeah. You said something a second ago too, just about identity. there's who you really are, and there's who you tell yourself you are. And those are actually different. And I think it is important who you tell yourself you are, regardless um, of who you really are. And I'd rather tell myself things that are going to help me live into a life that's fulfilling and great than tell myself things that create a victim mindset, or create unhappiness, or a narrative or story that just doesn't serve me or isn't useful to me. And so yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea.
What about earlier you talked about setting boundaries and how that was something you struggled with? Like, I imagine it was something you struggled with in work, like setting boundaries around like the hours you were available and that kind of thing. But that probably also was just in your social life, in your interpersonal relationships. What have you learned about boundaries now, or what's been helpful in regards to boundaries?
Yeah, there's some actual application of that, and then there's like just what I've just identified and how I want to be and how I want to live. And so, I back to being an entrepreneur, you find yourself doing more and saying yes to more things you should, which often means you've seemed to build a growing list of tasks and to-dos and need tos. I like that word. I want to ask you your thoughts around that more in a second, but, and so I just recognized one of the things, and I'll credit the book this idea came from, was there's a guy named Richie Norton. I'm probably related to him. I don't know. But he wrote a book called Anti-Time Management, and talks about, in that book, instead of living towards like what you want, like live who you want to be right now and create a life around that. So kind of like doing the reverse. Like oftentimes we're setting the goal, working towards it. And he says, like, what if you could just create the life you wanted right now? What would that look like? And so that's made me say, hey, like right now, and where I'm at in my stage in life is I've got kids that are in school 8 to 3:30 Monday through Thursday. So it's like, I don't want to work when they're home. And so I've just set some boundaries. Like my calendars, I don't take calls or appointments anymore at that time. Some of the application has been, I have all kinds of settings built onto my phone now to filter out notifications and turn things off, because my personality is, if I see it, if I get the text, I get the notification, I'm like, oh, shiny object. And I start responding, and I get busy, and I stop being present with where I'm at in my life. And so that's been huge to just creating space for happiness. And even I used to be terrible knowing I had things to respond to, and I don't know what's happened. I guess I've just gotten better at ignoring things. And it's been like, it's been very helpful too. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that for me, the experience I had was when I was young, especially, everything felt so urgent. And now I can look at things and go, there's a time, I'll get to it. Because it really is, especially as an entrepreneur, I think the number one skill, or one of the best skills to develop as an entrepreneur, is just to be aware of what the priorities are. What is a priority? And if it's not a priority, you can't stress over it. You can't worry about it. You get to it when it gets done, or when you can get to it. But priorities are so important as an entrepreneur, because the balance between burnout and success, or failure and success, the balance is so, that equilibrium is so close, it's so narrow. And so to really understand what the objective is and what is actually necessary to get to that objective, and then to cut out everything else, is very important.
Yeah, and I love that word, priority. I think it's, if you talk to entrepreneurs, they'll tell you what their priorities are, and they often don't align with what they say. And I've gotten a lot better at that, and was very bad at that in the past. I always would say my family is one of my top priorities. And you looked at my schedule, my time in my life, it's like, well, and I'm not saying you got to give your family all of your time, like, and I wasn't giving them any. So it's like, how can I really say my family is a priority if I miss every activity of my kids, if I'm not available for my wife? Like, that's not showing that that's a real priority in my life. If if I don't make space for it. So, or be present when I'm with them. So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
I want to
So,
ask you, Joe.
oh no, yeah, go ahead if you have a question.
I want to ask you about that word need you brought up earlier. Like, I love the way you highlighted it, and I'm curious your thoughts on need.
Need. Um,
I don't even remember what you were using, what
Maybe
context that was in. But
we can start with like first principles. So, being biological creatures, like the needs that we actually have, um, a safe place to sleep at night, um, food and water, oxygen, you know, uh, yeah, the needs that we actually have are very limited, like very small. In fact, you go back far enough and people were just wandering the wilderness and all of their needs were met by Mother Nature. And so our needs are actually very limited. I think what happens in uh, I, the way that I see the human species and the way that I see our minds working is that we build up all these stories, and the stories tell us, oh, they give us all these new needs, like, oh, you need this, you need that. And a lot of it is part of that biological programming where we're a very social species and we see ourselves in these hierarchies. And so there is a drive to compare yourself to what others have. And there is a desire to stand out as somebody in the group who deserves some kind of deference or reverence or something, or just you want people to think highly of you, to think well of you. And so I think that a lot of our needs come from what we perceive as needs come from just our biology and the context in which our lives exist now. You know, if you and I, both of our families come from the desert in Arizona and New Mexico area. And if you go back to when they first arrived there, my family arrived in the Arizona desert around the middle of the 1800s, the 19th century. And so their needs were, you know, that simple list: shelter,
yeah,
food, water, and a way to procure those things. We
that
live
was
in a,
life every day.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot. Again, going far enough back to the point where our ancestors were hunter gatherers, their lives were so intertwined with survival. Like every task of the day was about, not every task of the day, but a good amount of the day was about survival. And the tasks that entailed were so closely tied to that actual survival. So like if you went hunting, you had to find food. If you went fishing, if you went gathering, if a pack of wolves was attacking you or a lion was attacking you, everything you were doing was like so closely tied to your literal survival. Where we are today, there's these layers or these derivatives of survival that we're participating in. And so, you know, we have this thing called money, which is a currency of exchange, which makes it easier. So then we don't have to barter, which is another, like, would be another layer to actually get to the thing that we actually need, say food, shelter, water. And so the world we live in today, we're so far removed from the idea of actually surviving. We feel it. We get anxious about it. Like if we don't have a job, we feel it. But um, all of the luxuries and comforts that we have today that come from a built up economy, nations with laws and regulations and technology, and just, you know, we live in this world where we're actually pretty far removed from the in your face survival of our ancestors, where needs were something much more serious. And so in a way, I actually think that, and this might be a kind of your experience as well, when you were like, I'm going to go all in on being the best salesperson I can be and make as much money as I can be. You're doing that, but as you do it, it doesn't fulfill you. It doesn't make you happy. And I think it's because that is not actually, you know, it wasn't tied directly to the purpose for you being here. Like what you actually would get fulfillment for within the group. And Yeah, so I actually think that comfort and luxury, we have all these ideas of needs, but really it comes like another way of describing a lot of the modern commercial needs is comfort and luxury that we see other people have. And in a way, those things actually can really work against us. They can work against um, the feeling of actually being connected to our own existence, survival, and to life, whether you want to call it God or the universe or just being, those things can actually really work against you in that way. And, on my podcast, I talk a lot about myth and stories. And I believe that money is a myth. It's like one of our modern myths where the way that I talk about, the way that I kind of think that the difference between stories and myths is they're all stories. They're all just things that we tell ourselves. But the difference between a story and a myth, in one sense, is that when you're living a story that is a myth, you're not fully aware that it's a story. It just seems like part of your reality. And so money is one of those things. And in the modern context, money and comfort and luxury and progress, these are all just myths that we think are real, but they're just stories we're telling ourselves. I don't know if that answers your question. I went all over.
No,
I went all over the place with that, but that's how my brain works.
We could probably spend a couple hours just talking about that. But no, it's fascinating because it's like we haven't as like human beings, we haven't lived for very long in a state where we're living to survive anymore. Like that's like relatively new.
Yeah.
How we're hardwired and programmed to look out for survival.
Yeah, the security that we experience is just unprecedented.
Yeah, and so we're really not hardwired for the life we're in right now, and it's really fascinating to think about that and explore that. And I've tried to eliminate the word need out of my life, and I still catch myself saying it sometimes. And yeah, I just went through this, like, it was really helpful to me. I kind of went through this talk path. I think we might have talked about this on the phone the other day, Josh, but hey, like worst case scenario, what happens if I can't pay my bills? It's like, I'm probably not going to starve and die. Like I'll probably live with my parents. I'll probably get on food stamps. Like there's very little chance my basic needs would never be met in today's society. And so for me, I've just tried to replace that word with want. Like, what do I want? And why am I choosing this? So that I'm not operating out of a place of need. Because I found when I say I need something, I need the money, I need the success, I need X, Y, or Z to happen. Like it typically makes me limit myself, and there's usually not happiness in getting it either. So yeah, no, I just find that fascinating. When you were using that word earlier, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on it.
I think it's good. The level of precision you've achieved with your words, I think it's important because it offers some clarity, and then clarity also helps you understand priorities. And both in life, like you're talking about actually making your family a priority versus saying they're a priority, but then you don't spend all that much time with them. I think a lot of times people, they think that some of these, like these affirmations and this precision with your words, it might be kind of silly, it might be a little overkill, but in reality, what it really does is create that clarity, and then you can, then you know what your priorities are.
Yeah, I really found the way I speak changes the way I think. And we talked about this the other day, but it's like it's really hard to control your thoughts, and there's always this narrative going on. And it was kind of eye-opening when I recognized, hey, the things I'm thinking aren't who I am. And that was kind of like fascinating the first time I started recognizing that or realizing that. And that's why I think language has become so important to me, is the only way and this has just been my experience, the only way I've found that I can change my thoughts is to change the way I'm speaking. And as I change the way I speak, that tends to influence the way I think going forward. And even then, it's like I've got to do that every day, because every day there's these, and I don't know if it's the hardwiring for survival or what, but there's just this voices from something bully said to you in second grade, or or something your mom or dad said at the grocery store to you about not being able to afford a candy bar. Like you just hear those things, and that's not, they're often not true, that the things that voice is saying in your mind. So yeah, I found just speaking things out loud helps me, one, if it's not true, recognize how ridiculous it is when I say it out loud, especially the first time. Like there have been thoughts that have been in my mind for years, and the first time I say it out loud, I'm like, why have I like felt that way for so long? And
Yeah,
then
or
I
just
think,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just that thought also, but then just also once you have kids and not wanting to realizing you don't want to pass that same type of thinking onto your kid.
Yeah, that's so. I'm scared about how I'm going to mess them up.
We all are.
And somehow society lives on.
Yeah, that's a comforting thought in a way. Like when you're in public, and like sometimes I really get anxious about my kids, and then I'm in public and I look around and I'm like, oh, all these people were kids, and everybody's just living life. So somehow everybody's moving forward. But yeah, again, going back to the way you talk about your words and how your words impact the way that you think. I think that one of the purposes of myth is to bring us to greater consciousness. And words are a big part of that. Like in the New Testament, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And if you really focus in on the words that you're using, and I think you could probably speak to this, like it moves you closer towards consciousness, closer towards like an awareness of what your priorities are, but also just the way that you and your behavior impact the world around you and impact the people around you. And the more aware you can become by analyzing your own thoughts, analyzing your words, again, like it moves us closer to whatever may be the higher part of us, the more divine part of us.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that. That's really good.
So what about,
go ahead.
If you have a thought, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I just shared that example with you I think where this conversation started is you saw me share something on social media about a conversation I had with my daughter, and it was one of the best conversations we'd ever had. She's 11 years old and she's never wanted to talk to dad about stuff before. And I can't remember if I shared this with you, Josh, but for your listener, she's at that age where kids are like starting to get into cliques and starting to fight and starting to like have drama. And she's like in the middle of all of that. And there's, kids that are bullying, and she's a sweet girl and she just tries to be kind and nice to everybody. And so it's really hard for her that some of her friends aren't choosing that, and that there's these cliques are forming. And first she was talking to my wife about it, about like being bullied or how to respond when your friends are doing things like this. And my wife was like, well, I was the mean girl, so you probably shouldn't ask for my advice. I can't relate enough. Your dad was picked on, go talk to him. And that was funny too, because she couldn't believe that. She couldn't believe that, oh, dad was picked on once in her life, and once in his life. I'm tall, I'm 6'3", I'm a big guy. And so that was kind of funny to see her head kind of go, really? Like that could happen to my dad? And so we just ended up having this conversation, and it started in tears. And as we had her talk through the emotions she was feeling, like she'd start talking about the emotions, and then that like pain would go away as she recognized the emotion. And it was just fun that by the end of it, we were laughing about the thoughts she'd been saying to herself in her mind at the end. It was just really a really powerful example, and things she'd been telling herself the last year or two that I didn't know she was thinking or saying to herself. So hopefully, like if she can catch that now, she'll avoid a lot of pain and heartache maybe we've had to endure through life, Josh.
Yeah. Or it's good to have a dad who can just help kind of coach her through it or walk her through it. That would have been nice to have as well back then. But I want to circle back again to coaching, because you said that you were doing sales and you were doing great, making good money. But the thing that was more fulfilling was seeing these kids that you had known them through church, and then they came and worked for you, and you saw them figure it out and do really well, and that that gave you a completely different feeling, and so then you followed that feeling, and you ended up in. I think this was interesting to me as well because obviously your business is focused on leadership and sales coaching, but kind of the bigger theme of this whole conversation is like all of those things are great, but there's like a deeper purpose to some of the things that we pursue. And then also, if you can actually learn more about yourself, figure yourself out, you can be more effective at all those things. And so I'm just, maybe just circling back around to that feeling of wanting to help people. And then, what are you doing now for, like, what's your approach now to actually helping people?
Yeah. So I think the big thing I want to help accomplish is one, I want to change the way the world views sales. And I think that comes from me, oftentimes we want to help who we used to be or help the person we were 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago, or early in our life. And so just a little background on that thought, and then I'll kind of explore what you're saying or what you're alluding to, Josh. I said this earlier that sales was a means to an end for me. I used to, when people asked what I did, I've been in sales since college, a mix of door to door, on the phone, B2B, B2C, done a little bit of all of it, and selling online. And I used to avoid telling people I was in sales because I didn't like, then the story in my mind was I didn't like what people were going to perceive or think about me because I was a salesperson. And I feel bad for this industry, but I just was worried people view me as a car salesman. I really love my used car salesman. I bought a lot of great vehicles, and there's just this stigma around sales that salespeople are sleazy. They're going to say whatever they can to get money. And so I think one, just recognizing that selling can be a noble thing, that selling can provide freedom, that selling can provide abundance. And it's really just helping people get the things that they want, was really empowering. And then because I've lived out of that way and I've always tried to sell in a way that's honest and ethical, I've come to realize hey, there's nothing to be ashamed of with this. And so part of teaching people sales to me is teaching them they can do it in a way that feels good and works, and that those two things can go together, that you don't have to just twist arms or be dishonest to sell, that selling can really be ethical influence and really helping people discover things about themselves that they wouldn't have been able to discover on their own, but by asking them good questions and helping frame things in a way for them to see things differently can really just serve and help them. And so that's been a big part of it for me, is that I love that. I don't know if there's very many shortcuts in life. And if there are, it's finding mentors, finding people who've been there before who can show you the way. That's what I would define as a leader, whether that's a podcast you listen to, a book, a coach. And there's a lot of gurus out there, and not everyone who says they're a coach necessarily means they can always help you. And I've found the quickest way for me to learn has been to learn things from others. And so I call them actionable insights. I love to take something I've learned and put it in a package where it can save someone a lot of time and thinking and energy and stress to take an actionable insight and apply it into their life. So I find that that just really lights me up. That really fulfills me to do that. And that's what led me to make this change in my career and go from, and I was always doing that. I was always leading and training and teaching people. And I just decided I want to be all in on that. I really feel like I can make a bigger difference if I go all in on that, and I can have a bigger impact in my life and the lives of others. I feel like I can help a lot more people change lives doing that than just continuing to sell, because it is a transactional thing. And so, yeah, I just found that very rewarding to do that. And I would say the other thing is just for myself, just finding peace and happiness. I feel like sometimes we feel like in business, you can only have one or the other. Like I've got to grind and there's no time to be happy, or it's like, I'm going to be happy and I'm going to be broke. Like, or, or if I try to have my time, I can't have money. And I think it can be an and. I think you can have both and create both in your life. So I don't know where I'm going with all this now,
Yeah.
Josh.
Well, so what is as far as the actual entrepreneurial effort there, what does it look like? What kind of clients do you work with, and what kind of a process do you put them through?
Yeah. So from the sales side of things, I find I'm working with one of two groups. Either it's business owners in the industry, almost hasn't mattered. I mean, there's probably some industries I'm more comfortable with, and it's usually like, what's their persona? Like, so I really love working with the business owner that gets into business and realize, oh crap, like I've got to sell myself now, or I've got to sell a product now. I've never had to do sales. The other is probably the business owner or team that values growth for their salespeople, and maybe they don't have the time to do it, or they're not staffed for that. So like one of the teams I'm working with right now, they've kind of, you might call me like their fractional sales leader right now, where I've come in and I run a weekly meeting for their team and provide trainings every week. And it's more of a fractional role with that company. So that's what I'm doing on the sales side. And a lot of times it starts with mindset and their belief about sales, what they think about it, how they view themselves in sales, and helping them change some of that. And then we like to get into, okay, what you say, how to say it, what are the tactical ways we can do that? How can we ask better questions? How can we create a script? A lot of people don't like the idea of scripts because they feel like you sound, I don't even know what the right word is, scripty. And that's probably not a word.
Just maybe you don't sound as authentic or genuine or something.
Right. Yeah. I love that. And if you know your script, you know where you're going, it makes it easy to like, hey, these are the checkpoints I go along the way. And now I can start looking for areas to improve or progress or get better. Or I can start noticing where things break down if I follow a pattern. So that's usually what I do on the sales side. And on the business side, it's often just helping them get clear on what their priorities are, what their core values are. There's so many businesses that say they have core values, and then they have them on a wall and no one knows what they are. So getting clear on those, speaking those, creating a culture around those core values, helping them find out what makes them different as a business. If you don't know what makes you different, your commodity, or if the only thing that makes you different is the price, then you're not doing very good in business. So helping people recognize what those things are and work through those things. It's been really fun.
Yeah. It's interesting the way you talk about early on in your sales career, not wanting to tell people that you're a salesman.
Yeah.
I started off my career as an accountant, and I had the same problem, but probably for a slightly different reason. Because nobody has like there's not like this negative stereotype of accountants, but nobody wanted to talk about accounting. But one thing that I talk about a lot on this podcast, I talk to a lot of Jungian analysts, or we use a lot of Jungian psychology language. And from a Jungian perspective, everything, kind of the goal is to achieve some kind of a wholeness, but that wholeness requires that you see kind of the good and the bad, the light and the dark, the full aspects of something. And in sales, like I also have a lot of experience in sales, especially when I was younger. And there definitely are those crummy salespeople out there who will take advantage and lie and push people. And that's kind of like the shadow side of sales, like the darker side. But I also had the same experience when I was just calm, when I was just myself, when I was friendly with people and just was honest and walked them through. Like you can actually help people get to a point where they feel comfortable doing something or purchasing something and adding it to their life. And so from a shadow side, there definitely is that shadow in sales, but there's also a huge light side to sales, like this very good beneficial side of it. And even just extrapolating to a bigger economic level, sales makes the financial world go round. Like there would not be the economy that we have, there would not be the lifestyle that we enjoy. And a lot of it wouldn't exist without sales. And another thing about sales too is from an entrepreneurship perspective, if you're going to start your own business, you have to get really comfortable with sales, because you have to sell everybody. You have to sell customers, of course, but you also have to sell partners, employees. You have to sell investors, everybody that gets involved with your business. You have to sell them on the idea of your business. And so it's just it's a very important skill to have. It doesn't mean that you have to go about it in a nefarious way.
Yeah. I like to say that sales is life. And if you don't think sales is a part of life, you're really missing it. Like, I don't care if you're a car salesman or a teacher or a parent, like, sales is a part of every part of life. Like, you're selling when, like, back to with a business owner, you're selling your employees on, like, why they should come to work every day and what the vision of the company is and, like, why you should stick around. You're selling when you can try and convince your kids why they should eat their vegetables. Like, and so it's just a skill set that's going to only serve and help you to develop in every area of your life. And so I love helping people see, like, hey, it's something I can get better at. People talk about natural born salespeople, and I don't believe that's actually true. I think there are people with tendencies, or that maybe have a knack to learn it quicker than others. And I think it's a skill set that anyone's able to learn. Like, I was, you know this about me, Josh. I'm kind of an introvert by nature. A lot of jokes are made about my time spent playing World of Warcraft in college. And, like, by nature, I never, like, if someone had told me in high school I was going to go into sales, I would have been like, yeah, right. I will never do that. And here I am. So
Yeah, in a way that also seems very Jungian, because where you probably the thing you fear the most, or the thing you don't want to do the most, is often the path to growth, because it's because some part of you is imbalanced, and to fear the thing, or to do the thing that you fear, to do the thing that you resist, it helps balance you out in a way, because you build up that other side of yourself, the less developed side of yourself.
I'm excited to read more about him and his philosophies and teachings. We've talked a lot about him the last couple of days, and I've never read any of his work. So
yeah, I think what Carl Jung did for me is it's just he provides like a language and kind of a model for understanding myself, and then thus understanding the world around me, because like the model of the self is, you've got your ego. These are phrases that everybody is pretty familiar with. Like, you even use some of them, like you say persona. The persona is this mask that we put on when we go out into the world. And the part of us that manages that persona is the ego. And anytime that we identify too strongly with the ego, it really starts messing up our lives. And a way to think about that is, like, the ego always wants to look towards the light, look towards, like, it wants to, like, see itself as being good. And so it doesn't want to look at its bad parts. But if you're always looking into the light, then you're actually missing the next part of the psyche, which is the shadow, because the shadow is behind you if you're looking into the light. And so these are all, just these different aspects of the individual. They're archetypes, archetypal figures or energies or powers or something. And as I learn more about them, and I'm able to relate them to my own life, to the stories that I encounter, the whole world kind of comes to life, and you can see that really, like you keep talking about, life really is what you think about it. And the more that you can figure that out, the less that you project onto the outer world. And it kind of gives you more of an awareness or a consciousness of who you are and how you're influencing the world. But also it really helps you understand other people's motivations, other people's behaviors, and not from a perspective of wanting to control or manipulate, but really you can come to start to empathize more with people and feel more compassion, even if that doesn't mean being involved with them, or, it might even mean setting stronger boundaries. But at the same time, it really lessens your, I don't know, animosity toward the world, because you can really see it as like, oh, we're all kind of just going through the same thing.
Yeah, we started talking about something before we started recording, Josh, and I wanted to go down that with you too. You started, and I think you were referencing Carl Jung and discovering who you already are, or something like that.
Maybe
And I had something I wanted to share,
maybe
but I
like
wanted to hear
the
you.
true self or something.
The true self. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, tell me what that is to you. And then I want to share the thought I had with you that I was going to save. So,
Yeah, I don't know if I can put it into words like about myself. Like I'm not, that's the thing is, this idea of identity. It's not like we are born with some identity. We develop our identity as we go. And so the true self is just, it's like, it's kind of like approaching God in a way where we're not going to see God visibly in this life. He's not going to stand before us. And so the best we can do is try to follow a feeling towards God. And in the same way, that's kind of how I think we develop as well, is you start to notice the patterns in your life. Or I think the best way to do it is actually to think back to when you were really young, before the world had influenced you, and think about those things that you really enjoyed, the things that you were really curious about, the things that you wanted to pursue. And in a way, I think that that's when Jesus talks about death and rebirth and being born again as a child. I think that's the psychological interpretation of that, is get back to the point where you can, back before the world influenced you, and who were you and what were you interested in, and then pursue those things. And so most people, I think, deep down have some desire of something that they would like to pursue. And some people have the courage to go after that thing, or the good fortune to go after that thing. And a lot of people just kind of think of it as like, oh, that would be cool, but I can never actually do that. But I think that if you do that, it moves you closer to this place of wholeness, of integration, of like integrating different parts of yourself, which leads towards becoming that more and more like that true self. And Jung would call that the process of individuation.
yeah. So what I was started to share with you, and I said, hey, let's save it for the podcast. Uh, um, and I can't say word for word how he said this, but I can say the thoughts of it. And when Michelangelo was carving the statue of David, and he carved him out of marble, he says, like, David was always there. I was just uncovering who he was. And so I've kind of I've loved that idea. And I think that's fascinating. Like who I am is there and exists. And I'm often just like uncovering it and trying to get closer to who that being is. And yeah, these are topics that, like, the first time you hear them, you're like, it's so weird and so funny. And the more you explore it, like, the more you find it just to be truth.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's been really cool, having known you for so long, to see that self coming out more and more. It's I think that's really inspiring, and I think it's super cool that I've got to see it. And yeah, it's why I wanted you to come on here and talk about it. So I really do appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me. It's funny too, because I would say that most people don't talk and think the way that we're talking and sharing thoughts around today. And I don't want to say like I've become careful who I share this with. And it's kind of that idea of pearls before swine. Like, I just have found it's not always helpful and useful to just go into a deep conversation about this. So it's always going to like test the waters a little bit, and see how people respond to it first. And if it aligns or resonates, it's like, yeah, let's get further into this. So
absolutely.
I love these kind of conversations.
Yeah. Well, we are over our hour, so I will give you back the rest of your day so you can go and do your thing. But thanks again, Drew. This is awesome. Lots of good stuff.
Thanks for having me.